Good day! Welcome to your creative writing class. For today's lesson, we will be having creative writing versus other forms of writing as an introduction to our course. Objectives: describe the importance of creative writing in the middle of a pandemic, differentiate creative writing from other forms of writing, and construct a short paragraph creatively. Content of the day. What is creative writing? Elements of creative writing. Examples of creative writing versus other forms of writing, and creative writing techniques. In this module, we will learn about creative writing, the type of writing most of you do that you might not be aware of, and what sets it apart to the other types of writing you may be familiar with. So, what is creative writing? Creative writing is a form of writing where creativity is the most important. Through the use of imagination and creativity in telling stories, through visuals that evokes emotional impact to the readers, like in poetry, short story, novel writing, and more. Its main purpose is expression of something. It may be of feelings, thoughts, or emotions. Creative writing is done to give entertainment or education, spread awareness of something or someone, or to express one's thoughts rather than only giving information or making the reader act beneficial to the writer. Creative writing is making a new world for whoever reads one's work. Just remember the last time you've read a book, a novel, a poem, or even a short story you read on social media. It takes you to a new world other than your own. Sometimes, we read to escape the cruel world that we have today, and that is probably one of the beauties of creative writing. Creative writing is writing that expresses ideas and thoughts in an imaginative way. It's also called the art of making things up or putting a creative splash on history, as in creative non-fiction. It is considered as making things up because creative writing does not necessarily have to be factual. Some may be based on true stories, but once it is altered and added something new or different, it's already creative, hence making it fictional and a made-up story. It gives entertainment or education, spread awareness, or express one's thought. Even if it's fictional, readers can still learn something from it. This form of writing expresses the writer's thoughts and feelings in an imaginative, often unique, and poetic way. Writing creatively starts anywhere, anytime. Now, we will see what are the elements of creative writing which are essential for us to know, for these are what we have to keep in mind. So, when we are finally able to write on our own, we will have these elements to go back on and be reminded of what we need to consider when writing creatively. Unique plot. One thing that differentiates creative writing from other forms of writing is the fact that it always has a plot of some sort, and often a unique one. Without a plot, there is no story. Without a story, it is mere writing facts on paper. And that is not creative writing, but very much like journalism. Readers like a unique plot. It means they want to read about something they haven't yet. They want a different perspective. Remakes are also considered creative writing because it is created through another plot formed by their own unique ideas. Take La Casa de Papel or Money Heist. Most of the time, thieves in a story are the villains of the story and policemen are the heroes. But in this show, it's the opposite. The gang was doing it as a sign of resistance to the injustice in society. This is a very unique plot, and I think it's one of the reasons why people love the show. Character development. Characters are important when writing a story. Character development, the changes in a character throughout the duration of a story, is also encouraged to make stories more interesting. From beginning to end, readers should be able to understand the characters. Talking about the same show, Money Heist, the inspector in season 1 and 2 is Raquel Murillo. She has beliefs and she doesn't condone violence. This is why she best fit to be the negotiator during the heist. She later falls in love with the leader of the heist, nicknamed the Professor. By the end of season 2, she realizes that the gang was really doing it for the resistance and not simply just to get money. In the next seasons, she joins the gang and proves injustice in the police. Even the Professor had a character development. He was once a very awkward, emotionally cold person and doesn't even believe in love. He was used to being alone. But when he met the inspector, he fell in love. He realized that the world was better because he was with her. Underlying theme. Whether intentionally or not, most stories have an underlying theme or message. Creative writing needs that theme or message in order for it to be complete. This is one of the beauties of writing a story. It can entertain and teach lessons at the same time. Same show, La Casa de Papel or Money Heist. It wasn't just a heist. It was about the injustice in the authorities. In the first heist, it showed that the bank they robbed printed their own money and was not held accountable for it. In the second heist, it showed that the police tortures their prisoners to get information without even going under due process. It showed the corrupt police system, which doesn't just happen in movies or series, but also in real life. Remember EJK in our country? Or any person who goes against the government and the next day ends up being dead? That's what the show was about. That is the message or the theme. Visual descriptions. Unlike newspapers and magazines that don't often have descriptions of surroundings where events took place, creative writing uses visual descriptions to make readers imagine where the characters in the story are and have a glimpse of what it looks like. If you're familiar with Harry Potter, whether you've read it or watched it, you're familiar with the Great Hall in Hogwarts. In the book, it was described in page 86, the first time Harry went in the Great Hall. It says, Harry had never even imagined such a strange and splendid place. It was lit by thousands and thousands of candles which were floating in mid-air over 4 long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. It was hard to believe there was a ceiling there at all, and that the Great Hall didn't simply open to the heavens. The visual descriptions used make it better for the readers to imagine what was being described. Point of view. First person. The use of the word I is in the first person point of view. This means that the main character is the narrator of the story. For example, I always look forward to my summer vacation at the beach. I like to collect seashells and swim in the ocean. We love walking the dogs in the woods. These sentences use the word I, meaning the main character is the one telling the story. Second person. When the narrator is speaking to you and uses the word you, it is in the second person point of view. For example, you were supposed to be here an hour ago. Third person. A narrator relates all the action of their work using third-person pronouns such as he, she, and they. We have the third-person limited, which uses the words he, she, they when talking about the characters. They are aware of the character's inner thoughts and feelings, but nobody else's. It is similar to the first-person point of view, but instead of the character telling the story, a narrator takes their place. Third-person omniscient. The narrator uses he, she, they, and has all of the knowledge, and it knows everything about everyone. Dialogue. Interactions between characters are needed for the development of the story, thus dialogues are needed as support of the story. Just imagine characters in the story not talking or doing anything, it will get the story nowhere. Thus, dialogue is very important in a story. Imaginative language. What makes creative writing creative is the way writers choose to express what's in their minds through words. Part of imaginative language is the use of metaphors, similes and other figures of speech, imagery and other comparisons in order to paint a vivid picture in the reader's minds. Example of simile is, he is as tall as the mountain. And when this is said, you already have an idea that the person being described is really tall. Emotional appeal. Any form of writing can appeal to emotions, but this is the goal of creative writing. As a creative writer, the job is to make people feel how you want them to by telling the story using words that is emotionally appealing. Most teenagers like love stories or novels. They swoon or get kilig over words said by a character to another as a declaration of love. This declaration appeals to the emotion of the readers, hence making it more relatable and likable. Examples of creative writing. Novels. This is probably the most well-known example of creative writing. Novels are usually fictional and are longer in length and follow a set of characters and plot structure. It is without a doubt creative because it has most of the elements presented above. Short stories. It can be historical, narrative, comedic, satirical, or fantasy. It also follows a set of plot and features one main character or a selection of characters. Short stories typically result in fewer than 50 pages. Flash fiction. This also follows some sort of plot, but resolves within a few hundred words or less. 6-word stories, 50-word stories, and the 100-word stories are kind of flash fictions. In addition, we have what we call sudden fiction, which usually tells a story in about 750 words. Poetry. From sonnets to haikus, there are many ways to express yourself through poems. You may play with words or experiment with musicality behind words. Poetry uses figurative language and imagery most of the time. Songs and raps are considered a subcategory of poetry because both uses elements of poetry and just puts melodies on it. Plays. It involves creating a script that includes setting, plot, and characters and having it acted out most of the time on stage. If you want to work with other people and you want your work to come to life, you may want to be a playwright. Scripts. Like traditional plays, TV and movie scripts are examples of collaboration between people, including cast and crew. These scripts also use creative language to capture the interest of viewers. Non-fiction narratives. If you don't like fiction writing, pick a topic, event, or person and make a story of it, using creative language and using a unique angle in making a story. Make it descriptive and interesting. Memoirs, biographies, essays, speeches, greeting cards are considered subcategories of non-fiction narratives. Blogs. With unlimited number of topics to choose from, Publish a blog and make it creative by using the language of the innovative and attract the attention of your readers. Twitter stories. With only 280 characters, how can one tell a story? With Twitter, that is exactly what happens. This can be another type of flash fiction known as Twitterature. Comic strips. If you are interested in both writing and drawing, then this is an example of creative writing for you. You can begin by drafting and developing your story and drawing your comics. Since you have already been introduced to creative writing, let us now discuss the other forms of writing that you may be familiar with. We will be discussing 3 forms of writing. These are academic writing, technical writing, and journalistic writing. Now let's briefly discuss this one by one. Academic writing is a writing that conveys information, data, and knowledge. Its main purpose is just to add information for our brains to store. It doesn't matter whether it can entertain or be appealing to us. It's there to keep us updated with new information and keep our minds alive with facts. Information used are also factual, and it cannot be made-up stories. It is orderly, organized, and procedural. One example of academic writing is a research paper. Research papers have its proper order. You start with an introduction, review of related literature, methodology, and results and discussion. This writing uses formal language. There is no room for slang language here, only formal language. It uses impersonal tone. Impersonal tone means not influence or having your personal relations involved. When making a research paper, you are not allowed to use the words we, I, or any pronoun that relates to you. It should be the researchers to make it impersonal, because the information is not about you, but it's for your readers to learn something from your paper. Lastly, it doesn't have style because structure prevails. You cannot write research papers with your own style or however you want it to look like. It's because you have a structure or pattern to follow and you cannot divert from it. What you want for your paper to look like, or if you want it to look like more of yours, it doesn't matter. What matters is the content and the information your paper holds. Other examples of academic writing are books and book reports, translations, essays, research papers or articles, conference paper, academic journals, and dissertations or theses. Next, we have technical writing. If academic writing is about the academe and giving information, technical writing is also about giving information but in the form of directions, instructions, and explanations. Cookbooks are examples of technical writing because it contains step-by-step instructions of how to cook a certain recipe. Manuals found on newly purchased cell phones are an example because it teaches how to use the phone, likewise in any gadget. Reports of analysis are examples because technical writing also involves explanation of how something came to be. It is also a step-by-step process. Like academic writing, it uses formal language, uses impersonal tone, and doesn't have style because structure prevails. Other examples are instruction manuals, policy manuals, process manuals, user manuals, reports of analysis, and instructions for assembling a product. I'm sure you're already familiar with journalistic writing. Journalistic writing is used for news reports on newspapers, radio, television, or even news you see on the internet. It has shorter sentences and paragraphs because news articles only report about the essential parts of the report. No need to go round and round about details. It needs to be direct, and it has a recognizable structure because when you look at a newspaper, you already see the headline in bold capital letters, and there is a brief summary in the beginning of the report, and followed by short paragraphs that contain everything about the reports. Short yet concise. It also uses formal language, an impersonal tone, and structure prevails, just like the reason for academic and technical writing. We have already given definition of the other forms of writing. Now, let's discuss how creative writing is different from the other forms of writing. First, creative writing is fictional. You can make stories that may or may not be based in real life. It may be what you have experienced, or a story of a friend, based on a famous celebrity, a made-up story, or just pure imagination. While the other forms of writing bases solely on facts. The other forms cannot rely on imagination, for this information are meant to educate people. This information must be factual. The other forms of writing use an impersonal tone. This means that they are not sharing about personal information, but facts known to everyone. Creative writing, on the other hand, uses a tone that appeals to emotions. Creative writers must affect the emotions of its readers for their work to be more effective. This also means that creative writing is expressive. It is meant to express the emotions of the writers and for the readers to feel that certain emotion. Most of the time, writers write because they want to express themselves. Whatever they feel in which they cannot express through speaking, they write. While other forms of writing are only informative. Sharing of information is its sole purpose and not to entertain. The other forms of writing follow a certain structure or pattern when made, but creative writing may use an illogical structure. If you can recall, plot is the sequence of events in a story. The normal order of a plot is exposition, which is the beginning of the story, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. But creative writing is not limited to this order. There are stories that starts in the middle of the story. There are stories that start in the end and just does flashbacks for readers to know what really happened in the story. This is why it is called illogical. The logical ways to start from beginning to end, but illogical does not follow this. When a story is illogical, the readers most of the time do not expect what happens, which makes it more interesting and makes the readers want to read more. This is also why creative writing uses figurative language and imagery, because it is creative in nature, while the other forms of writing maintain its technicality and stay straight to the point. It uses vocabulary that is generalized, which means understood and known generally by people. Unlike the other forms, there may be technical terms not known by most people. Like in medicine, there are medical terms that we people of non-medical backgrounds will not be familiar of. This is why creative writing uses normal words used in normal conversations for the readers or audience. Creative writing can be vague, symbolic. There may be stories in which you will not get the meaning at first, stories that have symbolic meanings, and those that may start in the middle and end in the beginning. If creative writing is vague, the other forms are clear and straightforward. There is no going in circles with the other forms. Unlike creative writing, the writers can choose for their stories to go whichever way they want to. We have successfully differentiated creative writing from the other forms of writing, and I hope that you have fully understood the lesson. Now, I'll be giving you some techniques or tips to use when writing creatively or if you want to enhance your creative writing skills. First, write about what you know. Beginners often get told to write about what they know because they can use settings, characters, backgrounds, and language that is already familiar with them, which makes it easier for them to write. If you have an idea about what you want to write, jot down everything that comes to your mind and start writing. Write about what you don't know. It is also interesting to write about what you don't know. You can create new worlds from worlds already familiar. You can choose a different era, place, or people and make a different story about it. Imagination helps, and if it's not enough, research can be an answer. The best thing about creative writing is creating. Read widely and well. Not everyone is a gifted writer, so most writers read first before coming up with their own. So, if you're not sure about how to start, read first. Imitation is really necessary at first, and eventually, you'd be able to come up with your own style. By reading, you can also write about what you don't know. Nothing encourages good writing than being able to read about good writing. Hook your readers. There are already thousands and thousands of stories in the world, and you cannot force anyone to read your work. So make sure to hook your readers from the start. Make your first sentence or paragraph interesting and intriguing to be sure that your readers will continue wanting to know what happens in your story. Get your characters talking. We find out more about people through what they say, their choice of words, what other people say about them, and their habits. Writers must get their characters to exchange dialogues so that the readers are able to understand the people on the pages better. Create a scene list. If you don't want to write simultaneously, you can first list down scenes in which you want to include in your story. You can rearrange once you've listed, organize, and make sure it flows. Don't be afraid to experiment. Show rather than tell. Don't tell your readers, show them. Do this by showing what a person, atmosphere in the room, relationship between your characters is like by what they say, how they interact, and what they do. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It is okay to make mistakes since you are just beginning to write. Don't fret too much about getting it right on your first try. Writers rewrite and edit their work. You can also ask a friend to read your work and give you feedback, then consider their suggestions when you revise. Keep polishing. Again, it's okay if you don't get it right the first time. After your first draft, read your work and edit. See what you need to leave out, what to change, find out what to improve, make your work better. Write, revise, write, revise, write, and revise again. Once you are satisfied with how your story flows, you may check your punctuation marks and grammatical concerns. Editing is hard work. Don't give up. Make the most out of your opportunities. If you have free time, whether it be minutes or hours, write. Whenever using public transportation, waiting for a friend, time spent in a waiting room to see the doctor, when it's possible to use your phone, you can write. Use your free time well. Be ready with taking down notes because you never know when creativity comes to you. Have fun. Sometimes when we're forced to get it right, we no longer have fun with what we are doing. So, make your story interesting and have fun with the process of writing. Never forget to have fun and love what you do. That way, it will not be too stressful as it already is. That is it for today's lesson. I hope you have learned from this video. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask your teacher because we are more than willing to help. For your tasks and activities, wait or ask for your teacher's instructions. Thank you and stay safe.
Happy learning at home with lessons made easy by Olivarian GoTeach. One proud Olivarians.